This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello there. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. I hope you're doing fantastic. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you wish to be on the program. As always, if you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, the social media links, everything you need. I got a question from a listener who wasn't here in the first hour, so yeah, for those of you just tuning in, we survived the hurricane fine where we are. It thankfully missed us going east. The private sector corporate models for the hurricane were way more accurate than the National Weather Service model. The National Weather Service model literally had the eye coming over my house. And the private sector models showed it moving to the east. The buddy of mine, who's a professional climatologist, meteorologist, was very concerned about me early on. But as he started seeing the private sector models update, he's like, "You're going to be fine. It's going to miss you. Don't pay attention to the National Weather Service." And that was good to learn because we were fine. There are a lot of people, though, who are not fine. There are many people dead. If you can help, text the word donate to 33777. I'll get you a link back to the Salvation Army's Hurricane Helene portal. Every dollar you donate will go to relief efforts, and there's a lot of help is needed. Now, I saw this clip from John Kerry over the weekend, and I just want to play for you this audio. It is, again, it's John Kerry. He's speaking, I don't know where he's speaking, but he's talking about the First Amendment.
So tough. Everybody's wrestling with that right now. And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact have kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go, and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways.
The First Amendment stands as a block. He was very guarded in what he said. You could hear him pause and catch himself. not quite saying, I think, what he probably wanted to say. The First Amendment does stand as a block. Now, listen, as I mentioned in the first hour of the program today, I've got concerns about all this stuff. The number of people who were scared to death at a bioweapons lab caught on fire in Georgia because the name of the plant is Biolabs. It's a pool chemical company, but people on the internet very maliciously were saying it was a biolab. Remember, like the ones in Ukraine, the ones in Wuhan? A biolab was on fire. Oh, my gosh. Or the ABC News gave Kamala Harris the questions, and we have an affidavit from someone, and it wasn't true. Or the Democrats. I mean, the Democrats in there, Donald Trump called the neo-Nazis good people in Charlottesville, Virginia, which isn't true. But they continue to believe it. Problem here is the imbalance. The National Press Corps leans to the left and has picked a side, and everybody knows they've picked a side. And the problem here now is that people on the right are going in search of information, and oftentimes they're finding people who aren't willing to give them truthful information, just salacious stuff that isn't true, because those people then make money with the eyeballs. The more salacious stuff gets more clicks, generates more revenue. They don't care about the truth. They're willing to lie to you and keep you constantly in terror. I understand John Kerry's concerns. The problem is, he says that the people who used to give you the information have been eviscerated. Why? They haven't been eviscerated because of competition from more truthful sources. They've been eviscerated because they themselves chose a side. And in choosing a side, they discredited themselves because they became partisan sources. And they constantly, problematically, always benefit the left. So much so the left is convinced that the truth is progressive when it's not. Just the media is progressive. I want to read for you two headlines. Thomas Friedman writes in the New York Times. I have an experience with Thomas Friedman he probably doesn't realize. I was on a train ride. I was on a Acela Express, and I was in first class. I was on a book tour. My agents put me in first class on a Acela Express from New York to Washington, D.C., and Tom Friedman was sitting across from me. If you don't know anything about Thomas Friedman loves China. Thomas Friedman has written copious amounts on how China is superior. China gets stuff done. We need to be more like China. He's talked about their high-speed rail that they were able to build so quickly that apparently fell over at some point. And I'm on this train with Thomas Friedman. I kid you not, the guy who's the waiter in first class is trying to take stuff from Friedman, and Friedman snaps at the guy. That whatever the guy was doing, he's like taking stuff before Friedman was finished or something like that. He literally does say this would not happen in China. It snaps at the guy. Leave me alone. I was stunned by. I mean, this guy, the steward on first class, we're coming into station. He's got to clean up, and Tom Friedman is yelling at him that this treatment of him would never happen in China. Well, of course, you're a propagandist for China. They take care of you. The willful naivete of people like this. So this is Tom Friedman in the New York Times, July 23rd, the headline, Netanyahu looks like a small leader at a historic moment. And then just last week, the beginning, 2 weeks ago to be fair to him, 2 weeks ago, September 22nd, 2024, this is Thomas Friedman's headline in the New York Times, why everything is suddenly spiraling for Israel. So in July, he says Netanyahu is a small man. And in September 25th, why everything is suddenly spiraling for Israel. There's no question that Israel's government has posed to the world more often. There's no other question that Israel's government has posed to the world more often since Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th and Hezbollah attacked Israel on October 8th. What would you do? What would your country do if terrorists crossed your western border and killed, maimed, kidnapped, or sexually abused Hundreds of Israelis they encountered, and the next day their Hezbollah allies sent rockets over your northern border, driving away thousands of civilians, all cheered on by Iran. What would you do? It is a powerful and relevant question, and one that Israel's critics often dodge. But they aren't the only ones dodging it. The Israeli government, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, wants you and me and every Israeli and all of Israel's friends and even enemies to believe that there was always only one right answer to the question: invade Gaza, hunt down every Hamas leader and fighter, kill every last one, and not be deterred by the civilian casualties, then pummel Hezbollah in Lebanon, and do both without spending time planning an exit strategy for either. I've argued from day one that it was a trap I'm sorry to say the Biden administration was not firm enough in stopping Israel from falling into, and not firm enough in insisting on a better road, a road not taken. This is no time to be pulling punches. The Jewish state of Israel is in grave, grave danger today, and the danger comes from both Iran and the current Israeli ruling coalition. You see, I've never had any illusions about the macro reasons this war happened. It is the unfolding of an Iranian grand strategy to slowly destroy the Jewish state, weaken America's Arab allies, and undermine U.S. influence in the region, while deterring Israel from ever attacking Iran's nuclear facilities by using Iranian proxies to bleed Israel to death. What? I mean, there's some truth in there. But the fact that you think that Israel has gotten this wrong by doing what they're doing, and then today, what this Israel, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran conflict is really about. And this is a man that John Kerry has no trouble platforming. This is a man that John Kerry is totally down with. The left in this country hates the First Amendment and hates your ability to speak out and challenge their presuppositions, suppositions, and beliefs, because they want us to go back to a world where you just had ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, and the New York Times spoon-feeding you the truth. We're not going to go back to that. Some on the right make it easier for them. You know, Tucker Carlson platformed that Daryl Cooper guy who said that Winston Churchill was the bad guy and Hitler the victim in World War II. He's now out defending Hezbollah, attacking Israel for going after Hezbollah. You got people on the right platforming morons and liars and America haters. It makes it easy for guys like John Kerry to say, but you know the greatest way to deal with all the misinformation and disinformation, it's to be competent and truthful. And the left has given up on competence and truthfulness. They just want to censor anyone who disagrees with their prevailing consensus. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. The reality is this: the more information we have out, the more speech we have, the better off we are. It's harder for people to navigate these days. People have become very tribal. But the reason people have become more tribal in where they get their news is because the news media itself has betrayed us. The news media itself has destroyed its own reputation. Just look, if you will, at David Mirror's fact checks of Donald Trump in the ABC News debate. The ABC News team got almost every single one of their fact checks wrong and smugly insisted they were right. How can you believe a news media that arrogant and that insular and that protective of the left? You can't. If John Kerry's worried about the First Amendment being an impediment, you know what they should do? They should encourage the media to be fair and honest and have voices that represent all sides. You know, you go on CNN, you got Scott Jennings there. Scott Jennings is the only guy who is really willing to explain people on the right, and it's always 5 against 1 with him. At CNN, you know, I used to be on CNN, and it was 3 to 1. I was in Scott Jennings' shoes. I'd far prefer it to be him than me. He's better at it than I was. you're more likely to find an honest Democrat and an honest Republican yelling at each other on Fox News than you are CNN. CNN stacked the deck against the right. News Nation probably does it better than anyone. I'm on Leland Vitter's show. It's really one of the only shows I like being on these days because he has on someone from the left and someone from the right and eviscerates both sides. He's willing to ask tough questions of both sides. That's what the news media at one time was supposed to do. Now they're all in it to protect the left, and so you got guys like John Kerry saying, unfortunately, we've got the problematic First Amendment in this country. Yes, we do, and the problematic First Amendment is what's going to save us because it's going to elevate voices above the fools that the news media considers the elite voices because the elite are proving themselves to be incompetent.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. I am glad to have you with me. This is Governor Roy Cooper talking about the cleanup efforts underway in North Carolina on CNN.
The emotional and physical toll here is indescribable. I will be talking with people this morning. I'm going to head to one of the hospitals to a mass feeding site to get one-on-one from people what's happening to them right now. I will be taking with me FEMA Director Criswell, who will be with us. We plan to Starlink and talk with President Biden while we are there. I talked with both President Biden and Vice President Harris last night. They pledged their full support. This is going to be a tremendous effort in the short run, but looking at it in the long run, with the hundreds of roads that are destroyed, communities that were wiped off the map, we have to make sure that we get in there, are smart about rebuilding, doing it in a more resilient way.
Now, a lot of people have hung on to this last part, doing it in a more resilient way. I am legitimately not an expert in this. However, I think the point he's making is something I mentioned earlier. In a lot of the mountainous terrain in western North Carolina, they essentially carved out a path to the mountain and poured down asphalt. There wasn't really a foundational underpinning to the roads like there are in some states, like Georgia, for example. It took them a lot longer to build those roads through the mountains, but they built more of a foundation underneath the asphalt so they wouldn't be wiped out by mudslides. That's not the case in those parts of North Carolina, which, by the way, has much more mountainous region and needed to get in there. But I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that this wasn't some call for environmentalism, but just got to make the roads last longer in North Carolina, and that's going to take time. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. Y'all, I've got one of the new ones, and you can, if you go to EdenPureDeals.com, you can use ERIC3, ERICK3, as your code to buy 3 of the new Eden Pure Thunderstorms. In fact, let me go EdenPureDeals.com, and on the very front page of the website, you'll see enter your host code word. You put in ERIC3, ERICK, the number 3, click the submit button, and then it will reload you to the Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack. This is an air purifier, and it wipes out odors. It doesn't just give you the best of filtering. It gives you odor elimination. It wipes out 99.9% of contaminants. All you have to do is put in the discount code ERIC3. You'll get 3 of them, save $200, get them for less than $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I have waited until now for the raw politics of the show. It's time to consider where we are after a weekend with polling coming out and the like. And let me give you the rundown. And I want to start with this. I've gotten emails from people about all the polling that's out there. And I constantly have to tell people, don't look at the individual polls. Please stop looking at the individual polls. They're interesting, like, for example, CNN's latest poll has Harris up 1, but Quinnipiac has a tied race. I don't like Rasmussen reports. I do not find Rasmussen reports to be thoroughly reliable. What happens is right before the election, their results suddenly fall in line with everyone else. I don't find Rasmussen to be a credible pollster. Scott Rasmussen is a credible pollster. Scott Rasmussen is no longer at Rasmussen Reports. I just don't like Rasmussen Reports. Nate Silver and his Substack model I find to be a pretty good model. And in the pretty good model that he's got right now, he tends to think that you got a slight advantage for Kamala Harris. A very slight advantage for Kamala Harris right now. Here is, in his polling average, he's got Democrats up 3.2%. What you need to know is that if the Democrats get above every 0.5 of a point above 2%, increases the Democrats' chance of a popular vote and electoral college victory. Problem for here is that Donald Trump tends to overperform his polling. So nationally, you got Democrats up 3.2%. If Donald Trump's overperforming his polling by 2%, well, that puts Kamala Harris in the window of winning the national popular vote and losing the electoral college, which matters. Pennsylvania, he's got Dems up 1.2. Michigan, Dems up 1.8. Wisconsin, Dems up 1.8. North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Florida, Republicans up ahead. Nevada and Minnesota, Dems up. Texas, Republicans up. New Mexico, Dems up. I think that's a pretty fair assessment, although I do tend to think that the Republicans are probably doing better in Pennsylvania than people realize. All that is to say, right now, we're in a remarkably tied race, and all these people who keep calling me about polls and emailing me about polls and what polls should I look at the averages. Look at Nate Silver. Look at Real Clear Politics. In the Real Clear Politics polling average, Donald Trump is up 1/10 of a point right now, or 2/10 of a point in the battleground states, and that's what matters. And that's a tied race. So a lot of the questions I'm getting from people are, why are the polling so wildly deviating? Well, why is it so? There are a couple things I want you to understand. One is, pay attention to pollsters who have wild swings in their polling. Don't pay attention to the pollsters who never have a wild swing. Why is that? The reason is because about 1 out of every 10 polls from a pollster is going to be anomalous. It's going to be a bad poll. 1 out of about every 10. If your pollster never has a bad poll, it means the pollster is adjusting the weight of his poll constantly, which means the pollster is adding his bias to the polls every time. The pollsters who occasionally have wild swings that deviate from everybody else, those are the reliable ones. That's why I like the New York Times Siena College poll. Now, the New York Times Siena College poll is a better poll in off-year elections when the president's not on the ballot because it's easier to gauge turnout of parties. The party that's in the White House tends to not turn out as hard as the party out of the White House. It's kind of easier. And it's kind of based on party support. In an election year with the president on the ballot, it's based on the public opinion of the candidate, not of the party. And that's harder to assess. But I still think New York Times Siena does a pretty good job there. And the New York Times Siena has some wild results sometimes. The New York Times Siena College poll has some wild swings. And that means that the New York Times Siena College poll is not weighting itself every single time it does a poll. It's showing you what it itself is seeing without making adjustments. And that's credible to me. And right now, the New York Times Siena College polling has some trouble for Kamala Harris, but also some for Donald Trump. Pennsylvania is a sore spot for the GOP right now, but it is for the Democrats as well. My personal opinion is that Donald Trump is probably slightly ahead in Pennsylvania based on the Real Clear Politics polling average, and that matters greatly. So in the top battleground states, Donald Trump is up 2 points in Arizona, 0.2 of a point in Pennsylvania, 0.6 of a point in North Carolina, and 1.4% in Georgia, which I think is probably accurate. In Pennsylvania, one of the reasons Donald Trump is up, though, is because Trafalgar Group, which is Republican, has him up 3. And here's part of the problem there. The Trafalgar Group in 2022 was the Republican pollster who screwed up seeing the red wave was gone. Trafalgar Group had a bunch of really bad polls in 2022 that boosted Republican chances. If you took out Trafalgar Group in 2022, you would have seen in the polling averages the red wave had dissipated. So Trafalgar Group is the one poll, that and Atlas Intelligence, they've got Donald Trump up, both of them 3 points. Fox News has a tied race. Even Rasmussen has a tied race. Basically, it's a tied race. Now, this is why Pennsylvania is a great reason to pay attention to the polling average, not the individual polls. You have Bloomberg has Harris up 5. Atlas Intelligence and Trafalgar Group have Trump up 3. Fox, Rasmussen, Susquehanna, Muhlenberg College, Marist, and the Washington Post, they all have a tied race in Pennsylvania. When you take the polling average of all of that, it kind of washes away the blips, washes away the wild swings, and has a tied race with a slight Trump edge. I think that's fair. I think that makes a lot of sense. So where's the race stand? Completely tied. Completely tied. Kamala Harris has a slight edge in the national vote. In the swing states, it's really tied. This is why the hurricane matters in North Carolina. I have tried not to be political, tried not to be partisan when it comes to talking about North Carolina, but here where it comes, a real-world, crass discussion of presidential politics. The part of North Carolina that was most strongly in support of Donald Trump is the part of North Carolina that was hardest hit by the storm. Can the state recover between now and November 5th for those people to go vote? Because it's going to be hard for them to early vote. It's going to be hard for them to absentee ballot right now because you can't even deliver mail. You can't deliver absentee ballots in part of North Carolina right now because the roads are gone. The Postal Service can't get there. And Donald Trump's advantage in North Carolina came from that. So here's what I expect to have happen. I expect the conspiracy theorists, without any real evidence, to start telling you that the governor of North Carolina is uninterested in helping Western North Carolina. And I expect the same people who told you ABC News gave Kamala Harris the answers in advance and had an affidavit to prove it when they didn't are going to be the same people who tell you that the governor of North Carolina and Joe Biden are stalling relief efforts in North Carolina because they don't want those people to turn out to vote. I can see it coming. There's not going to be any proof, but people are going to believe it. By the way, that's all the more reason that the governor of North Carolina and the president of the United States should flood the zone with resources. Get those people back up on their feet as quickly as possible. If you do it, it wipes out the conspiracy theory that they're trying to cover for Kamala Harris. I think it's important for them to do. North Carolina is going to matter. If those people can't vote, if the Western North Carolina voters can't make it to the polls, Trump will absolutely lose North Carolina. I think they're going to be enthusiastic about voting for him. I think they're going to make an effort. But when the roads are unpassable, how do you go vote? You can't get the absentee ballot to you either, so how do you go vote? That's a problem. That could affect it. I don't actually think Mark Robinson at this point is going to affect it as much as I originally thought. Reason being, everyone in North Carolina, including the Republicans, don't like him. He was already going to lose. I think it's factored into the equation. The Trump team is going to have to pull some money from other states to supplement, but I think that's going to be fine for him. Right now, if the election were held today, I think Trump wins Pennsylvania. I think he wins North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. He doesn't have to win Nevada. He wins Arizona, he wins Georgia, he wins North Carolina, he wins Pennsylvania, he wins. But wait, there's more. Something's happening in Michigan. Alyssa Slotkin is Democratic Congresswoman running for the Senate. She warned donors last week that internal polling for her Senate campaign shows Kamala Harris underwater in Michigan. The 538 polling average has Harris up 2.4%. The New York Times Siena College poll has her up just 1 point. Senate Republicans have begun redirecting resources to Mike Rogers' campaign for the Senate there. That's something new. They hadn't been doing this, but they've started redirecting resources to Michigan. Now, it's true, Slotkin's trying to raise money, and to raise money, she's got to spook her donors and say, hey, we could lose this. You got to send more resources. It's true. The Real Clear Politics polling average has Slotkin up 48-43. The Democrats have been out spending Republicans. But there's been a noticeable reassignment of resources to Michigan by Republicans. Same thing in Ohio. In Ohio, everyone had written off Bernie Moreno. I myself have been writing Bernie Moreno off. Now, Trump's going to win that seat, but Moreno is looking more and more like he could win. So the Republicans have started redirecting some resources into Michigan and to Ohio. Ohio is interesting because Trump's going to win that state anyway, but now it looks like Moreno could win. Michigan's very, very interesting because in Michigan, all the polling up until now has suggested the Democrats have no competition. And when Slotkin sent out the email and spoke on this donor call saying we could lose Michigan, people interpreted it as she's just making a power play for money. She wants more money to close out the race. But suddenly Republicans have redirected resources there. That tends to be a sign. In my experience, remember, internal polling is way more important than external polling. Internal polling tends to be more accurate, more comprehensive, more detailed data. The fact that the Republicans took some internal polling that they have not made public, that's another big key that it's a credible poll. They haven't made it public. We know they've done internal polling. We know they're not telling us what it says, but we know they're now starting to move money into Michigan. That suggests a real Republican pickup opportunity. If Donald Trump wins Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina, he could win Michigan, lose Pennsylvania, and still win the race. He has way more paths than Kamala Harris. I'm rapidly reaching the point that when the race is over and Donald Trump wins, everyone's going to kind of look at each other and say, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, if he loses, they'll all scream it was a stolen election. But right now, I still kind of think Trump can lose. It's a tied race. But right now, he's probably ahead. And that's why the Democrats are starting to freak out. Now, you may be freaking about your bank. I don't want you to. I want you to use Old Glory Bank. In fact, if you go to oldglorybank.com today, Old Glory Bank can become your bank. They're going to set you up right. You can get a no-fee checking, a no-fee savings account. You can do loans with them. You can get mortgages with them. They're a real bank. You can even though they're an online bank, without a local bank branch near you, they've mastered being able to figure out how you can deposit cash, cold hard cash into your Old Glory Bank account. And I've used the feature, and it works great. Their app is tremendous. Their debit card is great. You can even turn it on and off. If you misplace your card, you're not sure you lost it, you can pause it, turn it back on if you find your card. Very great service. OldGloryBank.com. It's my bank. I have no fee checking account. I have a no fee savings account with them. I like them so much I've invested in the bank. OldGloryBank.com. You can get a loan from them as well. You can get mortgages. You can build a relationship with them. OldGloryBank.com. Takes less than 6 minutes to go online, fill out the form, and get your account up and going. They'll send you your debit card in the mail. OldGloryBank.com. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. I'm having some computer issues here, but I want to see if I can play you some of this from Harry Hinton on CNN.
That just jump off the screen. Sirens. All right, this is union households. This is Democratic margin in presidential election. It ain't what it used to be. You know, you go back to 1992, Bill Clinton won that union vote by 30 points. Hillary Clinton only won it by 12 points back in 2016. That was the lowest mark for a Democrat since 1984, Mondale versus Reagan. But look at where Kamala Harris is today. She's only leading by 9 points. That would be the worst Democratic performance in a generation, 10 points off the mark of Joe Biden, who, of course, won 4 years ago, who was sort of that union guy, Union Joe, right? Won it by 19 points. She's 10 points off his mark, and the worst in a generation if this, in fact, holds, Sarah.
It is interesting to note that the difference between this, and Biden still won.
Still won.
But those numbers are significantly down. All right, talk to me about manual labor, those folks who went to trade schools.
Yeah, those folks who use their hands. I think a lot of people oftentimes conflate the union vote with those who use their hands. Mike Rowe, of course, has been arguing more people should go to trade schools, more people should get a vocational degree. Look at this margin. This, to me, oh boy, does this tell you about the state of our politics now versus back in the early 1990s. Margin among vocational and trade school grads in pre-election polling. Bill Clinton was leading that vote over George H.W. Bush by 7 points. Look at where Donald Trump is today over Kamala Harris, a 31-point advantage. When I think people think of the working class, they think of people who use their hands, and we know that Donald Trump has been going after that vote, and he is in a very strong position, more so perhaps than any other bloc. The folks who go to trade school, vocational school, that has moved from being a core Democratic group to now being a core group of Donald Trump's massive amount of support among the working class.
I got to say, I have a theory on this. It's not race. It's not really even the Trump economic plan per se. It's that the Democratic Party elite put those people down. They are presumed to be racists. They are presumed to be ignorant. They are presumed to be uneducated. They are presumed to be beneath the care of the elite. They presume that these people need welfare when they just want a fair day's work. And these people, because they are installing your air conditioners and your stoves and your plumbing, they understand what the regulations from the Democrats are doing to you. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. I got to get a new air conditioner for our downstairs. It already had a leak, had debris fall on it during the hurricane that just have completely messed it up. At this point, it's got to go. And I can't, even before that with the leak, I couldn't really get it topped off because the government has now banned the refrigerant in it. So at some point, I'd have to get a new one anyway. And if you're in the middle class, you're in the working class. I mean, I'm putting a $12,000 unit in my house. It's absurd. Now, I thankfully I've got savings. I'm going to wipe out some of my savings I set aside for stuff like this. But it is such a burden on the middle class and on the working class. And the Democrats don't care how their policies affect these people. They think, well, we'll just give them a tax credit. And they don't even appreciate that you can't take the tax credit immediately. You got to wait for next year's taxes to do it. It's appalling, the treatment of the working class by the Democratic Party. They do not care about these people, and they know Donald Trump does, and that's why he's going to win